the Mets have agreed to a 12-year, $315 million deal with the all-star free agent shortstop Carlos Correa. Now, this is starting on a number of fronts because Correa was scheduled to be introduced to the media out in San Francisco yesterday after agreeing to a 13-year, $350 million deal with the Giants last week. But then we got word there were reports of issues with his medicals. And so here we are this morning. So let's start with that as the background. And Andy, I begin with you. What the heck is going on here? How did we get here?
That's what a lot of people in high-ranking positions with the New York Mets would still like to know at this hour, Gary. This is a strange process, the way that this happened. Now, I first of all, Mets fans waking up to the news that the team has an agreement on terms with Carlos Correa. Awesome, right? Like, great news, fun stuff. Steve Cohen continuing to be an exciting owner, and that's definitely the headline. The facts of how this got, I don't want to say done because it's not done. When you have a player who just had an issue with the physical. But the facts how they got to the agreement phase, which is where we are right now, is that, we know what happened with the Giants yesterday. We don't know exactly what the medical issue was, but that there was one, and they canceled the news conference. Steve Cohen and Billy Epler, by about 8 or 9 ET last night, were in communication with Scott Boras. They've been interested in Correa over the course of the offseason, as they're going to be interested in any player. They got a little bit down the road with him before he agreed with the Giants. Not that far. That was kind of an 11th hour thing. But they kind of picked up where they left off once this issue with the Giants became clear last night around 8 or 9. And they had an agreement by a little bit after midnight Eastern. Steve Cohen's in Hawaii, so my internal clock is not telling me right now off the top of the head what time it was in Hawaii, but that's when it got done here in New York. And then there were quotes in the New York Post, which broke the story on the record from Cohen regarding the signing before the physical, which definitely has some people involved a little bit concerned because, as Jim can speak to even better than I can, there are some red flags about that process-wise that if an issue does arise, could become a concern for the Mets. I don't know, Jim, you want to jump in on that?
Well, yeah, all right, I'll jump in. I mean, so how can it get to this point for the Mets, right? So the Giants go through this whole contract. They go through the physical, which they have done ahead of time. They schedule a press conference, and then the press conference is postponed, as you mentioned, Gary. And it's highly unusual. So there had to be something that happened late in the process. You know, we all know that there's been a back issue that he's been managing over the last couple of years, but they seem to be okay with that. So it's seemingly something else, and that's been reported out there too, that it wasn't necessarily the back issue. But what are some of the things? Well, there could have been something else that came up in the physical that a doctor looked at and said, I'm not comfortable with the length of this contract with, let's just say, hypothetically, a knee issue. We have no idea what it is. It could have been a knee, could have been something else. There's some last minute things that happen at this. There's also in some cases blood work that's done in testing, before you get the contract insured. Some teams insure it before you make this announcement because it's such a long-term contract and it's so expensive. It's $350 million is a lot of money. So you want to make sure you have all these things buttoned up as an organization before you say anything publicly. When you say something publicly, then with arbiters, and there's been a lot of cases that have come in the past, arbiters have made that decision that it is a guaranteed contract at that point when teams go on the record to say the contract is done and we're having a press conference and all of this stuff. So the Giants were very careful in the sense they did not say that this deal was done. They had no team announcement. They had no official press release saying it was done yet because they still had these final hurdles to go through. Now they find an issue. Now you go back to the general manager. The general manager has this uncomfortable conversation with the agent saying, we found something in the physical that concerns us, and you try to renegotiate the deal. Well, Scott Boras is one of those guys that's like, oh, no, we're not doing that garbage. That is not going to happen, right? Like, no, especially when he had other teams, Mets and others, that were willing to go to this high level, especially if Boras thinks that the contract, whatever the issue is minimal. So he then can go to other teams. He has the freedom to go do that, go back and circle back to the team. So something there happened, allowing him to go back to the other teams. He probably circled back to others besides the Mets with teams that were interested and asked them, hey, and in this point, he is transparent a lot of times. Like, listen, this is what the issue is. I don't think it's a big deal. I can provide you other information that will provide it. And now it's up to the team to decide if they're willing to take that risk. Obviously, the Mets were willing to go to a certain level, not to the very level that the Giants were. But now all of a sudden that conversation, there's several conversations that had to have happened, I'm sure, after the Giants postponed this press conference to when this actually came out and was announced.